Hey, backroom people. We're going to do a little interview here. So quiet on the set for a few minutes. Do what you need to do. Where are you going? I know, please get out of here. Please leave.
Coffee.
Coffee. Okay. My name's Lisa Marr, and I'm the operations director at the Echo Park Film Center. The Echo Park Film Center has been around 13 years. And about 13 years ago, I had just made my first film. I had been a musician for many years, traveling around with my band. And we recorded an album, and we thought it would be fun to maybe make some films to go with each song on the album. And I just found a Super 8 camera in a thrift store and shot my first roll of Super 8 film. And I lived in Echo Park, a neighborhood in Los Angeles, close to downtown. And I was walking around one day and I saw a new shop, and I walked in and there was this guy there who had a beard and crazy hair, and he said, "Come on in, we're opening a film center today." So it was perfect timing for me because I was a brand new filmmaker, and I really liked the idea of community cinema. I come from Vancouver, and there is quite a well-known cinema there called the Blinding Light, but I didn't see anything like that in LA, which seemed kind of ironic because it's all about the movies, but there wasn't really a neighborhood cinema space. So I started coming to watch movies, and I really liked the vibe here. I liked the way that movies were presented, not as something to just be watched and admired, but as something to get involved with. And Paolo always did these great introductions. So when it came time for our record release party with these videos that we'd all made, some of them shot on Super 8 film, someone said, "Oh, ask that guy if you can have the party there." So I did, and we had our release party here, and I started volunteering, and slowly over time we fell in love and realized we wanted to spend our lives together. So that was 13 years ago. Sometimes there are some moments when you don't have a lot of money when you're operating a small nonprofit, where you are kind of at the mercy of outside forces, and that's the scariest part. There have been a lot of amazing nights here, and we've hosted filmmakers from around the world, and it's always exciting to teach classes because it's super exciting to see people get really into the idea of film, maybe people that have never used film before. But I think some of my favorite nights are the open screen. It's something that we do the first Thursday of every month, and people from all over bring their work. Sometimes it's work they made 20 years ago when they were in college, or sometimes it's something they just finished that day. Yeah. And it's all different genres, and you never know what to expect. But it's a really nice evening where anybody can come and
they just
participate.
Bring their reels here?
They bring something. Yeah, it's got to be 10 minutes or less. First come, first served. It's kind of like an open mic. But people just come and share, and then we talk about it. And people are really supportive. It's nice. Sometimes I think the film business can be very cutthroat. People can be very cruel, and it's hard to get your work shown. But here, everybody comes into the mix, and everyone is really caring and excited. Ever since we've been open, people have said, "Oh, it's the death of film. There's not going to be any more film." And that was 13 years ago. And I think it is an interesting moment in the history of film. It's been around for, over 100 years. It's still a relatively new art form, but the technology has changed so much in that time. But now people are taking the means of production into their own hands, and that's really exciting. So instead of having to rely on a lab or a big corporation making film stock, we are working together to make our own emulsion, to process the film, not just with chemicals, but with eco-friendly ingredients like coffee and vitamin C and flowers and things from our gardens. And we're getting together to show them we don't need to be validated by a big movie festival. We can make our own festival. And so in that way, I think, in a way, it's more important than ever. And it's going in really new, exciting directions. So I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. Yeah, this was where the early film studios were, just down the street. And it was a bunch of people getting together and working together, not, figuring it out as they went along, not necessarily knowing, but just kind of doing it and getting excited by that. And that's what I love. I don't care about the latest technology. I don't care about expensive cameras. I don't care about things looking good. Way rather sit around a table and make something collaboratively on film, and maybe half of it doesn't even turn out. I'd rather do that than have something that I know is going to be perfect every time. In a community space, most of our energy is directed towards helping other people make their work. So our work usually is a little bit different. It's usually a little bit less structured, something we can pick up and put down as we go. So we always film our travels. That's an ongoing Super 8 project, and then we play live music to it. So we just shot a bunch of film in Old Crow in the Yukon Territory. We made a film with the community that we're going to share, but we also shot some of our own stuff. And we always have these sort of, dream projects on the back burner. There's a woman that I'm very interested in who drove around the world in the early 1920s with her partner, and they shot films, and they would show the films, and by showing the films, they would get enough money to kind of go to the next place. So some of that footage still exists, and we've started a project where we're going to some of the same places that she went to in the early 1920s and refilming those images as described by her on the same technology she would have used at the time. Oh. So I'm excited about that. It's fun. But as far as, big productions and tight deadlines, it doesn't work with our reality.
What kind of lens is that? Is that a
24?
24, wow.
It's like
super wide, yeah.
Super wide.
My name is Paolo Davanzo. I am the executive director. It's a very fancy title, but and the co-founder of the Echo Park Film Center. I was raised in a very politically active household. My parents were both activists that worked for social change and social justice. So at an early age, I figured out that I loved politics and political activism, but I also loved cinema. And how could I combine those two things? So in 1990, I was living in Italy. I was studying at the University of Padova. I'm from Italy, but I went back for 2 years to study at the university. And it was during the first Gulf War, which you're too young to remember, but so Papa Bush, the first Bush president, and I was watching these horrible things happening through the Italian media, right? In the U.S., it was this sanitized CNN smart bomb war where no one was dying. But on these images I was seeing in Italy, where there's not the same censorship of the media, there was free media, I was seeing these horrific images happening. And it made me kind of clued me in, I was only 20 years old at the time, of the power of filmmaking for positive good and also for manipulation and propaganda, and how could I combine my activist work with film, so not just to entertain and to bring joy and hope to people's lives, but also to create social change and awareness, right? So when I came back from that, I finished my degree. I ended up getting a master's in filmmaking, and I just realized I loved film. I worked in the film industry for a number of years, but I didn't like the formality, the hierarchy of the film industry. I didn't like the pretension or the fact that you were the director and I had to listen to you because I was not the director. And I felt there was not a lot of creativity, even though some beautiful things are being made. I just felt like people were pawns in the game, and no one really cared about the book you read last night or the meal that you made with your loved one. It was really about the business. So I said, how do I combine the love of filmmaking, activism, and education all in one place? And I'd grown up like Lisa playing in punk bands and doing kind of untraditional things, doing my own zine. So the kind of the catalyst, the reason I opened it, was my parents died very early in my life, in my early 20s, and I wanted to honor their legacy of giving, so I said I'm going to open a free school and a cinema and a film co-op, all those things combined. So I was teaching at a college at the time, and I remember one of my students took my class, and he fell in love with film, the mechanics of film. And then I hadn't seen him for 2 or 3 years, and he heard I wanted to open a free school and a cinema, and I remember I was teaching at this lecture hall, and it sloped down, and there was a little window at the end, and it was like the scene in The Graduate where Dustin Hoffman bangs on the window and says, "Elaine, Elaine," because this guy, so mild-mannered, was banging on the window, and he's like waving at me, and I said, what the hell's going on? So I took a break from the class, and it was Ken, my former student. He said that I heard you're opening a store, a cinema and a school. Do you want to do a store? Because I can fix anything. After taking your class, I became obsessed with equipment. So it added like a legitimate retail model to the nonprofit. Instead of giving everything away, we could do telecine, we could fix equipment, we could rent gear. So Ken and I, along with a third gentleman, Joe, had this dream, this vision. Let's make a place that's free, that's equal, that's accessible. It doesn't matter if you're a millionaire making Hollywood blockbusters or if you're a little pimple-faced kid with $2 in your pocket. You're still beautiful, you're still important, you still can share ideas. So I'm such an optimist that maybe I've tried to forget about the sadness, but there's been hurdles from robbery to people breaking in to like things that happen in any urban environment. There's been nights when we've hosted a beautiful filmmaker from Tibet or from Africa, and one person shows up, and it breaks my heart because we're showing the most beautiful film in the world, like those sort of things. And always, Lisa alluded to the economic struggles, when you run a space that is, you do it for love, and it's not really a profit incentive, that sometimes it is a struggle to keep the doors open and make money, but it's never anything overwhelming, and we've done it for 13 years, and maybe another 13, we'll see. to what, like the magic of cinema. Like our slogan is "Sell your TV and come to the cinema." Because I think in the world of internet, we sit in our room, we watch things off a screen, a small screen, and there's no dialogue. There's no communion with the community. But this place, we always wanted a place that you celebrate, you laugh together, you cry together, you have a discussion after the films. And that's probably the most important thing, bringing people together. In the United States, there's something very common in that when I was a kid called the bookmobile, where it would go to city, and it would be a big truck, and you could walk into it, and they would give away free books. It was to encourage people to read. So we stole that idea. Instead of the bookmobile, it's the filmmobile, and we bought an old Air Force truck, gutted it, converted it to run on vegetable oil. It has solar panels, it has Wi-Fi. It's nicer than my apartment. It has hardwood floors, has a beautiful queen-size bed, and we travel all over the world. Lisa and I have driven through Mexico, all the way to New York City and back, through Canada, doing free workshops and doing free screenings. So it's an extension of everything we do here, but it's become itinerant. And that's a tradition that might have been prevalent in Turkey. It was very popular in India, in Mexico, and a lot of kind of developing nations, that there would be this itinerant traveling cinema that would go town to town before the internet, before movie, and would show films. So we're resurrecting this tradition of the itinerant cinema. Film is dead. No, I'm teasing. No. Yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier. There's certain challenges we're facing that with labs closing and certain film stocks becoming less prevalent. All the technology we use is used technology, so finding it on eBay and thrift stores. So it's not as easy as it was 20, 30 years ago. Every film school in the United States taught film, and it was a curriculum, and so it is becoming more challenging. But with those challenges, I think it's more exciting. It's in the sense that it's something you can't take for granted, something you really have to celebrate and keep alive. We're doing classes in hand processing. We're doing classes in making our own emulsion. We're doing found footage classes where we find old films and chop them up. So I think it'll just take on a different life and a different entity. And I would hope 50 years from now, film is still around. It may not be, but it is today. So let's shoot it and enjoy it. We've been doing a lot of projects. We just got back from the Arctic Circle. We shot a film, and Lisa puts it well. Like a lot of times, our art is based on community practice. So like we produced this film in the Arctic Circle, but in many ways it is our film also, because we were there working with the filmmakers, and really like our love for each other is a love based on this nomadic tradition, right? Lisa toured for 10 years in a all-girl punk band. I toured all over the world showing my films. So when we fell in love, we want to continue that nomadic spirit. So we'll be moving to Europe in the spring. For 4 months, we'll be living in England for 2 months, 1 month in Berlin, and then 2 months in Ukraine, working on film projects. So, yeah, it's exciting. It's always in flux, always in motion.